Good morning, all. This is Shweta from People Matters, and we are back with an exciting session of our webcast on making sense of the HR tech market and what to buy. By 2021, the HR technology marketplace is expected to be a $34 billion market, out of which $3.6 billion worth of business will be based in Asia, including India. There are a number of products that HR professionals can choose from, right from onboarding solutions, performance management, to improving employee experience. The question that most leaders face is how do you select the right technology? An investor approach to selecting HR technology might hold key lessons in assessing the viability of the product. In this webcast, you will learn about how HR leaders can assess HR technology products amid a marketplace of many such products. Here's what we'll cover. What does the HR tech marketplace look like in India as well as globally at the moment? How should you assess HR technology solutions when it comes to viability, scale, or alignment to business? How do you determine whether it makes short or long term sense for the business? And what are the exciting new innovations to look forward to in this space? What are some of the challenges in this space? So, let me introduce you today to the speakers of today's webcast session. First, we have Nairit Bhatia from the investment team at Chiratae Ventures. Nairit focuses on early stage investments in fintech, health tech, enterprise SaaS, and consumer media and technology. Apart from identifying opportunities across sectors, he also supports in helping the portfolio companies grow and building investment thesis around sectors. He was awarded the prestigious CEO Award by Steve Squeri, Global CEO of American Express, for his contributions. Our next speaker is Aniket Leela from the investment team at Nexus Venture Partners. Aniket has an interest in consumer products. He's passionate about using technology to make the process more efficient and convenient for consumers. After graduation, Aniket moved to Boise, Idaho to work at Albertsons, the second largest grocery retailer in the US. As part of the corporate development team, he assisted in the $24 billion merger with Rite Aid, integration of meal kit startup Plated, and partnership with Instacart. And our moderator for today's session is George Oman, Senior Director, HR Technology and Process Consulting at Cognizant. George leads the global HR technology and process consulting COE at Cognizant. His focus areas include HR technology and digital transformation, process quality and optimization, enhanced collaboration, decision support and analytics, and enterprise program management. We have saved time for you to ask your questions at the end of the webcast. For those who are live, they can simply submit or post questions at any time during the session, and we'll try to respond to as many questions as time allows. We'll also be taking polling questions for which you can log on to menti.com and use the code, which is 372 376219. Great. So we have a very exciting webcast session to look forward to. So without any further delay, let me invite George to take over. Over to you, George.
Thank you, Shweta, and I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me all right. Good morning to everyone. Thank you, Shweta, for kicking us off today and the detailed introduction. First up, I want to also kind of thank the People Matters team as always for bringing this vibrant community together for this topic, which is in the line of fire of today's dialogue. As Shweta clearly called out, with employee experience at the center of the universe, transforming human resources through technology is the centerpiece of many workplace and marketplace discussions today. And given the global talent deficit, impact of the future of work, and the workplace, and of course, the skill shortage, which would impact an unrealized revenue potential for organizations, as well as the inclusion of the multi-generational workforce. There's no taking away the elephant in the room, enabling the digital enterprise of tomorrow. So with that, I'd like to probably have my fellow panelists weigh in on this. Ankit and Nirud, by way of introducing the respect, I'd like for us to discuss the first, question, which is essentially, what does the HR tech marketplace in your mind look like in India, as well as if there are perspectives from overseas as well. Nirud, you want to go first?
Yeah, hi. This is Aniket. George, thanks for those questions, and Shweta, thanks for the intro. I think I'll quickly give you a 1 minute background on Nexus, and would let Narid do the same for Chiratae, and then we can get your question. Nexus is a 12-year-old fund or a 12-year-old company. We have managed slightly over $1.5 billion and are currently in our fifth fund, which is a $350 million fund. We are sector agnostic investors, so you'll see investments that we've done over a wide range of verticals. Some of them are delivery, third party logistics company, Snapdeal, Zomato, Postman, Druva, etc. We are a typical Series A investor. Our average check size is around $2 million, and we can invest up to 10 million in a round.
Sure. And Thanks for the introduction, George and Shweta, both of you. And so we'll take a couple of minutes to just quickly introduce Chiratae as a fund. We were formerly called IDG Ventures. About 6 months back, we recoined ourselves to Chiratae Ventures. We happen to be one of the largest domestic funds with a significant amount of rupee capital invested in our fund. So we have also been around in the ecosystem for the last 12 years, made close to 76 investments till date, out of which some of the better known names might include Yatra, Mintra, Lenskart, FirstCry, CureFit, Rentomojo, Nestaway, and pretty much a very healthy track record for us. And we're primarily focused on tech-enabled, tech-focused companies, largely focusing on Series A and B. What brings me here today and very excited about this session today is broadly, we see about 5,000 to 10,000 companies a year, make about 20 to 30 investments a year, out of which a healthy chunk comes from this market. And which is what is very interesting and quite exciting. Would love to learn a lot from you guys out there today, learn a lot from George today, and also share our 2 cents about what we understand about the market and how we look at the market.
Great, thanks. And Nirud, do you want to go ahead and take a shot at the first topic? As I was saying, what in your mind does the HR tech marketplace look like in India today? Based off
Sure.
your experience.
Sure,
Thanks.
thanks. Sure. So essentially, how we look at it is, every time we evaluate a thesis and evaluate a sector, right? HR tech being the subject here. So we initially start with trying to landscape the market, and which is what I'm trying to do here as well. So there's one bit of the entire HR tech market, which is essentially the ancillary sector, which is not really directly the decision makers, might not be the core companies, core corporates. The second bit is that obviously the talent management section or the talent acquisition sector, wherein there is a lot of propensity to digitize that sector with a lot of new companies, gamify that sector, a lot of interesting companies that are lowering the cost of acquisition of talent for the HR tech companies. But I agree that we have seen enough number of companies. The first generation of those companies included people like Naukri. Now we are seeing new kinds of companies in that subsector itself. And the third space within a corporate is employee lifecycle management, wherein companies like Darwinbox are coming about, companies like Early Salary on our portfolio is offering financial services product to those companies. So essentially, that's how we take a stab at it. That's how we see the entire landscape, George.
Great, thank you. Interesting comments. Aniket, do you want to go with your point of view, please?
Sure. Yeah, I think one thing that I would add is, so Nexus is a very bottoms up investor. So we do not go about, say, looking at particular industries and saying, let's go back a company doing continuous performance management for employees, but we are very much believers of backing entrepreneurs and then helping them figure out things as you go along the way. But yeah, as Nirit said, I think broadly how I look at HR tech is again divided into, I would say, talent acquisition, talent management, where you have payroll, attendance, your typical HRMS stuff, the core HRMS software, and then talent development. I would say talent development is something that I'm personally very excited about, as I see that growing the most in the future. For me, talent management when it comes to payroll, attendance, and other utility products have pretty much become a commodity where will be very hard for companies to monetize.
Great. And I think those were interesting comments. Aniket and Nairat, based on their experience, have come across a number of firms in some sense that in some ways cross across sectors. This was an interesting point of view that came up in the conversations leading up to this webcast. And I think, as Shweta was saying the other day, just for me to pitch in with my experience on this topic, HR tech is really tipping the scales as a potential multi-billion-dollar industry. Rumored to be in the hundreds of billions, and almost all the biggest technology brands are jumping into the fray. Right, it's no longer associated with startups per se, but the largest of the largest technology companies today, including consumer or retail kind of organizations, are jumping into HR tech as a space. There's a lot of great acquisitions and market consolidation. Most recently, you would have heard of SAP acquiring Qualtrics in an $8 billion acquisition. Microsoft lapping up both Glint and LinkedIn, along the way last year, and hence large organizations are integrating cutting edge tech into their core product roadmap in some sense. So with the plethora of opportunities across the life cycle, I would kind of largely think that talent acquisition, fitness and wellness, and team management tools are, in my mind, currently offering highest value in terms of competitive edge and differentiation. And this is naturally owing to the fact that there's a fairly high interlock of the outcomes from these deployments that you can attribute to core functional metrics and employee engagement. For recruitment tech, for example, the metrics could include a higher quality of selection, narrower funnel, optimized cost, faster turnaround time, lower the ability to lower hiring manager bandwidth, etc. And the fact that there's a high level of innovation and disproportional presence of recruitment centric providers in the marketplace. There are many that who are embracing this opportunity. Similarly, from a wellness standpoint, I think the perspective of combining emotional, financial, physical, and professional wellness needs of employees is kind of going into how wellness applications are designed today. And almost it's kind of said that they would, if these apps work well in the in the environment in which they're deployed, they could almost be like a 300% reduction in benefits and compensation related claims. Engagement of employees would go up by 60%, and of course there's like a bump up of at least 10% more productivity, which is the key word. So I think there is an equal focus on financial wellness emerging as much as there around the established area of health, wellness. And I think that's what Aniket was referring to as the bleed across sectors. We're kind of seeing that ability to engage employees across sectors. And obviously, the need for financial wellness is inherent given the entering the workspace. And as far as team management tools are concerned, I think it's fairly clear that in today's very virtualized environment, where we refer to the gig economy and different sections of workforce that are coming together to deliver on a certain product or a capability, impacting, common product development, productivity, the ability to kind of collaborate meaningfully, and for this tech to assist in listening in on conversations, enabling nudges, network analysis, etc. Are critical capabilities from team management. So as I said, recruitment, wellness, and team management, these would be the top picks from my end. Very quickly, Shweta, I know that we put up the first poll, but could you kind of share the results of the first poll so that we can just see what the audience's views are on this? All right. Okay, I think that's coming up, but
Yeah. As you can see, the answers to the first poll question that we put up have come up, and 50% have kind of voted for personalized employee experience, and 7% for magnifying the employer brand, and 43% have voted for all of the above.
all right. So it's interesting. There's, very clearly there seems to be an orientation or thought process that some of these HR tech tools do not directly or potentially have limited impact on on HR's ability to deliver better services to enable employees, but are more focused on the end user and the brand itself. So that's an interesting conversation. Of course, 40% kind of seems to think that all of them will be impacted. Um, yeah, that's a good perspective to have. Yeah, and you can take that off. Thank you, Shweta, and maybe tee up the next poll while we go into the next set of questions. And maybe this one is something that I'll have Aniket or how should organizations or consumers or investors necessarily assess HR technology solutions, in terms of scale, alignment, and long-term viability to the business.
Sure. Yeah. So I think the two biggest things that we look at is team and market size, right? I think touched on how
What's your
important.
take, Aniket?
Yeah. So I think there are two main things that we look at from an investor point of view. I think number one is team, which I already touched on, and I think which is one of the most important aspects when we are thinking of making a decision. And the second is the market landscape, which includes market size, competition, the amount of value. An HR tech company is really adding to an SME or a corporation or an enterprise. I think how judging market size is the easier part, but I think utility is really one where we spend a lot of time in our due diligence, which includes doing calls with chief human resource officers, people using such tech platforms at different organizations, and really asking them questions like, if tomorrow you weren't if this technology didn't exist, or if this company went out of business, how much damage would it cause your business? How much money would you be willing to pay for this opportunity? And I think that also then uh, lets us answer the question of is this a short-term solution or a long-term solution? And again, from an investor's point of view, you want to be investing in a solution that's long-term, that's here to stay, and that really adds value and makes lives easier for the companies, because I think that is the end goal of any such company.
Great. Nero, do you want to take a shot at your point of view on that question?
Yeah, so I mean, no, fair enough. So I mean, and Aniket, I mean, pretty much covered it all. So one thing which I mean, which would segregate ourselves from a VC, in addition to what Aniket said, is being a VC, we are not managing our own money, right? I mean, we have a few other LPs who are invested in our fund, and we have to multiply the returns for them as well in a very short period of time. So the additional factor of scalability is also something that we evaluate. So, for example, something just to give an example, for example, something in talent acquisition, right? There are traditional companies which are more services like in nature, which will help you find the right talent, right? Now, those companies are good companies with very high margins, but the scalability is a big challenge there. Do you see technology disrupting that and creating economies of scale in a services kind of company? It's very difficult to make that kind of company a venture investable company. So, in addition to all the factors that an HR tech company would be evaluated in, we also have this layer of scalability, which is a question that we need to answer. Can this company use tech in a way to templatize the solution, productize the solution, so that within a span of 7 to 8 years, a VC investor can multiply his returns from that asset? So that, in addition to all the other factors, I think this is one critical factor that uh, when we're trying to evaluate a company in HR tech, especially.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Nairath and Aniket. I think I would agree with your points around, clearly scale and the ability for the organization to partner with the customer on its long-term roadmap are critical. I think, based on reports, it's rumored that at least 25% of all technology projects fail within an enterprise deployment. 50% of them probably require very huge modifications and change management to the original plan. And at least 50% of them again are affected by poor management in some sense. So other than, of course, the standard fit for purpose, costs, time, priority, and resources lenses, which are table stakes, for assessing, HR technology, solutions. As a customer, I was thinking of a way to kind of capture, um, the that assessment through some sort of an acronym, and I thought that the acronym openness captures that, and I'm just going to quickly describe them. And openness, that's with one N, for the spelling bees out there. So O for openness stands for omni-channel. I mean, obviously, meaning that it needs on-the-go capability and continuity of experience, personalization for the employee or the functional user, and which in turn impacts productivity. E stands for efficiency improvement for the function, which is and again expected. N stands for network of teams, where can the product support virtualized workforces and thereby build trust. Trust is something which hovers around 30% in surveyed organizations today, whether it is between teams, whether it is with the customer, whether it's with leadership, etc. So how does it create a network of teams? That's N. The next E stands for experience design, and thereby facilitating meaningful engagement and I'll probably talk about that in the context of assessing. And of course, the last S is simplifying processes, right? Considering I think are broad parameters that I would kind of look these are in the context of assessing an HR tech solution. Hope everyone got that. Meanwhile, Shweta, if we are good with poll number 2, can you put that up there for us to have a quick look at what today's audience feels? And while that probably comes up, Nerith, this one is for you. How do you kind of think about whether the solution, makes whether the solution makes short-term or long-term sense? And I know that you talked about, many aspects which would come into play when you invest in a firm. But do you want to touch on, on long term or short term? One of them, do you want to pick and talk through?
Sure. So I mean, so correct me. So I see going two ways, right? So primarily, if you talk about short term, right? I mean, so there are companies which are solving one use case today, and they keep on solving that for donkey number of years. That's one way of doing that thing, and you become you land grab that opportunity, and you solve that. You become the number one player. You become the de facto person, de facto product for that particular use case. It can be Salesforce, it can be Confluence, it can be any learning management solution, but you solve that one use case. Then we come to the second piece, which is long-term benefit, where you have a touch point to the where you have a hook to get into the corporates that can be solving one use case, something like a Darwin box solution, which is more end-to-end. And then you gradually improve your or cross-sell different products that you have in your product suites to the organization to make a long-term benefit out of it. So we in VC language we call this LTV, which is the lifetime value that can be generated out of the customer, and the CAC would be the cost of acquisition of the customer. So the ratio of LTV to CAC is something very critical for a lot of companies which are dealing with enterprise. So this ratio needs to be at a very healthy level of 3 to 5, which we assume it's a very good number to be at. So short term or long term aside, I mean, if you're short term, then the short term benefits needs to be so strong that it's able to command that kind of LTV, which a long term benefit would also do. So that's how I would visualize the space and the short and long term benefits.
Great. Thanks for the insights on those two key metrics that you use in the investment context, Nerith. Shweta, do you want to put that poll question back up? Great.
Right. So the second question that we put up was, in your organization, which of the following capabilities embedded in HR Tech have enabled highest efficiencies? So we have received responses of 38%, which say that yet to leverage the above. 23% say robotic process automation. 15% artificial intelligence and machine learning. 15% have voted for gamification, and 8% for virtual and augmented reality.
Great. So, this is typically a set of, polls that I tend to, replay in some sense across multiple engagements to get a sense of how, today's consumer mindset is shifting. And it's interesting to see that, with all the buzzwords, in HR tech, hitting us, in everything that we read, see, or experience. At a very fundamental level, there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of creating meaningful business impact. And assuming that a large part of this audience is is HR professionals, then it will kind of uh, um, make sense to internalize the fact that there is some way to go before some of these technologies take deep root in the workplace. Great. All right. So I'm going to shift gears and probably quickly ask Aniket about considering the fact that you had called out, Aniket, that there's some um, products that you have engaged with in your venture experience. What do you think are the new and exciting innovations that you're tracking and you're looking forward to in the HR tech space? Maybe you want to use some examples as well for the audience to get connected to your points of view.
Yeah, sure. So I think how I'll talk about here is talk about, say, broader industries or white spaces that I see. The first one is when you compare blue collar workers, which let's include your gig economy workers in that, versus white collar workers. So For white collar workers, we have seen HRMS being implemented. We've seen payroll, attendance, communication platforms, feedback platforms, review platforms, etc. But personally, I think the blue collar worker space has a big white space. I mean, these are guys who don't even have emails. These are guys who switch jobs every 2 months. And I think the need for having an HRMS solution, which has to be very innovative, which has to be very India focused and India centric, is very, very high. I mean, from our experiences with companies like delivery, we know that this is a real problem. Uh, so I think that's one space. I think that innovation, I am starting to see companies tackle that. And I think for the blue collar workers, I would say it's across the three categories. So the categories that we spoke about, one is talent acquisition. These are guys who do not have written resumes. So now these are guys who love, this is, the let's call them the TikTok segment. These are guys who are comfortable with videos. So is there a way you can use videos to create resumes? Is there ways that these guys can show their skills to an employer using videos? So that's some innovation that I've seen in the talent acquisition. I think talent management is, again, communication is the biggest aspect here. How do you keep these guys engaged? How do you reward these guys? And as I looked at the poll question, right, a lot of these rewards will need to be personalized. Say one a delivery partner needs a bank loan, or the other delivery partner needs some kind of health insurance. So is there a way companies can figure out of personalizing these rewards for these gig economy workers? And I think the market is honestly not ready for talent development yet for the blue collar workers. So I think that's a separate conversation. Um, Second thing I want to quickly talk about is, again, characterizing between SMEs and characterizing between enterprises or corporations. Again, I think SMEs in India don't generally want to pay for products. I think of all Tally users, 93% of them are free users. So what are innovative ways companies can monetize when catering to this segment? That's where, again, I think a lot of innovation will come forth. Say compared to like a Flipkart, which is okay paying $1 or $2 per employee per month for some HR tech solution. And I think the third place of innovation that I'm seeing, and this is more, I think more innovation is happening in the US here, but will slowly start kicking in India, is employee focused versus employer focused HRMS or HR tech solutions. And what I really mean by that is, say, your hygiene factor versus a motivating factor. So a payroll attendance is table stakes at the moment. And companies now really need to figure out, how do I keep my employee engaged? How do I get feedback from my employee? How do I make sure that the employee is rewarded in the right way? How do I make sure that the employee is getting skilled and upskilled? So I think these are some areas of where companies are starting to innovate higher up the value chain, because everything at the bottom has become more of a commodity. So these are a few areas, and again, as in my experience, companies in the US have done better because ability to pay for such products is just higher in the US. India has a limited number of companies who would be willing to pay $5 per month per employee to keep their employees happy. It's unfortunate, but that is where the ecosystem is at. But it's slowly changing. Companies are beginning to realize that human capital is the most important resource that a company has. So yeah, I mean, those are I think some broad topics of innovation. Would love to take questions on any of these during the Q&A.
Awesome. Nirith, do you want to pitch in with your comments on this one?
Sure. Just 1 second. Can you just keep going, George? I'll just join back.
Sure. All right, no worries. Shweta, if we had put up, question 3 on the poll, maybe we could take a second for to put that up. But meanwhile, I'm just internalizing what Aniket said about the opportunities for the blue collar workforce, as well as the fact that from a pricing standpoint, some of the new products are still not able to serve the Indian market meaningfully. Is important to internalize. And in my mind, everything about the future of tech kind of lies, not necessarily related to HR per se, but increasingly, the boundaries are getting blurred. Lies in the senses themselves, right? With audio, visual, touch, and thinking, leading the way. We can already see the proliferation of the Internet of Things, IoT enabled devices, and AI enabled apps in our own smartphones, and these are very well integrated into our personal and increasingly professional lives. So whether by way of examples, whether it is learning technology that is powered by augmented or virtual audio and video, just like what we're doing today, employee wellness, that's enabled by health and touch sensors, augmented talent analytics powered by AI assisted nudges. All of these are fundamentally powering our decision senses to be really better, faster, and stronger. So I guess in some sense, the future of HR tech innovation will continue to kind of lean on always on tech, which is continuously listening, thinking, and helping. Much like HR is expected to do, and thereby kind of reinforcing the human side of HR tech. And With that, I'll probably have Shweta put up the poll questions. And Shweta, do you want to walk through the results for us?
Right. So we put up the question that which function of HR is clearly seeing the highest innovation in HR tech set to deliver key outcomes. So 56% have said that it's talent acquisition and integration. 25% have voted for talent and team management. 6% for learning and development. 13% for talent analytics, and 0% for performance and career management.
Great. So, I think, this is a leading indicator, Shweta, if you can keep that back on. This is a leading indicator of potentially for those on the call to also think about where you'd like to make your investment bets, right? As an organization, are you missing out on the talent acquisition, bandwagon of sorts, given that at least 50+% of this group believes that, that's where the biggest bang for the buck for HR tech exists. Clearly, talent management and team management is a second area, and with analytics and learning and development, bringing up a minority, there's still a lot of work to be clearly done there. It's interesting that nobody kind of thought that there's an opportunity for emerging HR tech to play a role in performance and career management. But I think, yes, there is an overlap between some of these sectors, especially the second and the fourth. And if you look at new age performance management tools, they firmly integrate some of the new tech as well. So again, early days for some of those tools to hit the deck. They're still integrated into larger end-to-end HR products, and probably the specific specialized outcomes are not realized there. I know that, Nerith, you weren't able to come in on the last question. So do you want to quickly weigh in from your end?
Sure. Sure. So essentially, I mean, sorry for that. I mean, I got a lag there. But incidentally, in addition to what Aniket said, right, the sectors, I would like to draw the attention to a couple of more sectors, a couple of more innovations which I see happening as well. One is obviously on the skilling side, wherein I see a lot of, so obviously, I mean, the broader gamut being skilling, wherein there's a massive crunch of I would say massive crunch of capital within lending within scaling market. So what's happening is a lot of players who want to get upskilled, want to upskill themselves, cannot afford those courses. Someone who is at a pay package of 25,000-30,000 a month wants to upgrade themselves to a pay package of 60,000-70,000 a month. and go through a data science course cannot afford to go through that package 1.1 1.5 lakh ticket size course. So what we are seeing is there's a large number of companies which are coming up to offering to solve this problem, and this is a huge public policy push as well from NSDC and from different public policies to fill for this gap of financing that's available for as an option for the scaling market. So this is we believe that this is a large opportunity that exists. Apart from that, we also believe that there is a massive lack of information available for the candidates, potential candidates sitting outside, about the people inside the company. So, for example, Glassdoor is there, but the amount of information Glassdoor carries in India versus the amount of information Glassdoor carries for the American companies is completely different. The thickness of data itself is a lot different. So we believe that there is a huge opportunity to create something like a Glassdoor that can be a mixture of Glassdoor, LinkedIn, Quora. I don't know how that happens, but we believe that there is a massive opportunity to create a large platform that gives access of learning information, of pay package information, of process information, interview information for the candidates who are sitting on the outside. If I want to get a job in Flipkart, I don't know what's the process of a product manager there, or what's the process of a data scientist there. I need those information somewhere. So I think there is an opportunity to create a large platform there, and this has to be driven by the organizations themselves. This cannot be driven by anybody else. This has to be pushed for by the organizations. So I see these two broad categories apart from the ones which Aniket mentioned already.
Perfect. That's insightful, Anirudh. Are you seeing this kind of coming in to the Indian space in the, let's say, in the short term? I'm thinking like 1 year, or is it like in the next 3 years? Where do you see it happening?
Sure. The first one is actually quite near term. I believe, as Aniket might have mentioned about the Lambda school as well, right? So the bunch of companies which are coming about in that model, which is sort of helping the financing gap. So you don't pay for the course at the onset. You pay for the course after you get a job, right? So that's sort of filling that gap. And the other way of doing that would be financing at the onset. So tying up, so something like what a Bajaj FinServ would be doing with a Chroma, giving a 0% EMI loan when you're going to purchase a fridge. So at the same time, in a similar fashion, you could tie up with someone like a large, someone like an Upgrad or someone like an Imarticus, wherein you would go through a data science course, you tie up with that organization, you offer a subvention-based 0% loan for the customers. And I think that's a huge category that can solve for a very imminent need. And it's not just academics per se, it's also something like a pilot training, nurse training. The pilot training course is 8 lakhs ticket size. The normal fitness training courses are 1.5 lakhs ticket size. So these are huge ticket size for someone to afford who is sitting at a 20,000-25,000 kind of pay package range. So I believe that's very, very near term. The platform play, I think one of these players, it can be some HRMS platform, it can be some financial product company, it can be some content community platform like Slack, which helps the employees communicate. That will evolve into an information source for the candidate sitting outside. I don't know what that is, but that's slightly mid to long term. But the financing one is a very critical need that needs to be solved right now. And there are multiple players we see in the ecosystem evolving to trying to solve that problem.
Great, thank you. Aniket, I'm lining this one up for you. And this kind of brings us to probably the last topic for discussion today. What do you think are some of the challenges that you are seeing emerging increasingly in the HR tech space? Would be great to hear your point of view.
Sure. I think for from a VC standpoint, I think number one is monetization. Like I mentioned, SMEs don't generally want to pay for anything. But I think from a poll, I get an idea that even say the larger enterprises and companies don't really see the value currently on paying for a software that helps you track performance of employees, that helps you get continuous feedback from them, that helps you assign tasks, roles, etc. to employees, and then help them further train them using different resources. So I think monetization is one challenge that we've seen. But again, the tides are changing, and both SMEs and companies are realizing that this is something that they need to focus on if they want to stay competitive and ahead of the pack. I think number two is scalability, which Narith also touched on. So a lot of companies that we've seen have, because a lot of enterprises want customized solutions, that becomes a hindrance in scaling. So I think one example that I love to use is of Slack. So Slack claims that out of every sale they've made, they've never had to customize their product even once. That's a company philosophy. Now, for an investor, that's fantastic because then there's really no hindrance in scaling. So I think customization, degree of customization, which then leads to scalability issues, is another challenge that I've seen. And number three, I think that could be a potential challenge is use of data. And I think I would love to get thoughts from the audience. So a lot of HRMS companies are relying on the fact that once they have all the payroll data of employees, then they can partner with NBFCs or other insurance tech companies, and really employ the philosophy of land and expand. So they can now start giving you personalized loans, personalized insurance products. But again, I think from some of my conversations with executives, they have had a fear of how these companies will really use that data. So I think that's another challenge or potential challenge that I see coming up.
Great. And I probably just want to follow through on your comments, Aniket. Based on my experience of interacting with both vendors from India as well as globally. I also interacted with some of the startups in the in People Matters own forum, the Startup Mentor program. There's certainly a heady cocktail of ambitious firms pushing their boundaries, as we speak. With employee experience really at the center of the universe, there is some level of possibility that fundamental capabilities are given lesser priority. And I think in my mind, notable amongst them are integration with enterprise systems as well as data security. And I think I'd like to follow through with your comments, Aniket, around integration and the example of Slack, because facilitating a converged experience across enterprise systems requires that there be a reliable, technical and functional integration between them. And sometimes, given the focus of features, functionality, program timelines, integration between systems is usually the first one to take a hit. And hence HR tech providers and customers should work proactively to identify the integration challenges and hotspots in the enterprise context of the functional life cycle. They should proactively build technical capability to enable and facilitate scalable integration, and have critical milestones linked to the accomplishment in the program plan itself. And taking control of this end-to-end integration in some sense is a very hypercritical step in my mind, in both short-term wins and long-term sustainability. And echoing what Aniket talked about from a security and standpoint, with data privacy and governance laws increasingly taking center stage in the compliance and regulatory context globally. The whole 9 yards of enterprise grade security is yet another capability to look out for. And this is in some sense accentuated with the introduction of new gen kind of technologies, including AI and machine learning, which inherently rely on the power of underlying data across multiple customers, right? Metadata across customers to boost and deliver that capability. So one should remember that with the customer holding principal responsibility as the data controller, and the provider, HR tech provider, being a data processor, both partners should ensure that contractually, integration wise and access wise, all aspects of data privacy and security are addressed with diligence. I'll probably ask Nairath, if you've got any quick comments to tie up that section before we head to the audience questions.
Sure, sure. And this will just be quick. I mean, I think most of the challenges were quite clearly articulated by both of you. One additional challenge which I see is, and my humble request to the entire community of HR tech leaders, right? There are a lot. I know there is a lot of companies who are trying to make inroads, but a lot of these guys are young folks, and they do not have the B2B relationships to tap onto large corporates, right? And the biggest problem is a lot of these would not come selling like a sophisticated SaaS company. A lot of these would sell like startups, right? And I would my humbly request you guys to put up the lens of slightly more liberal view when you're evaluating them as a potential business or a customer. They might not be able to scale up with you on day one, but potentially they're seeking your guidance or incubation wherein they could grow alongside you. So I think that's one of a lot of these companies, enterprise software companies in HR tech, sell like startups. That's one of the biggest problems. And we try to hire someone who has got years of B2B sales experience, but it's not often possible at an early stage to afford that kind of talent. So while the tech is really good, while the people are really sharp and hardworking, they do not know how to sell to or do not have the right connections in the large organizations. So they might be just coldly reaching out to you. So my humble request would be to evaluate them at least, if possible, get on a call with them, tell them what are the rights and wrongs, give them a very candid feedback about what you feel. I think that would resolve a huge part of challenge that the ecosystem is facing right now.
Great, super. Thanks, Narith. And I want to kind of segue into the audience questions. I think we got a few of them coming in. Folks who are online, do take the opportunity to post questions from your end. And I'm going to pick up one from Sushma to start with. And she is asking if we were to pitch to a CEO slash head of business on the need for investing in HR tech. I'm assuming, of course, that you're referring to, you being the customer. What would be the top three things that one should be focusing on? Aniket, do you want to take that question? I can come in with my comments as well.
Sure. I think number one always comes down to this. I think is take a quantitative approach to begin with. Show the CEO or head of business what will the ROI be, and by that, what I really mean is, say if you are trying to pitch a continuous performance management or an engagement tool. A lot of these companies will have case studies saying they increase engagement by X%, they reduce turnover by Y%. And I think turnover is a big hurdle and challenge for companies, right? Onboarding or recruiting onboarding costs for highly talented employees is very high. So I think that is one angle you can take. Number two would also be the qualitative factors of saying how the company culture will change, how employee morale will change, and all that then just leads to top line performance of the company. And I think number three, which is more of a long term discussion, is to have a budget set aside for for investing or experimenting with these companies. I think a lot of my conversations have been around where there is no set budget, so now you have to go to some other business function, take money out of their budget, which then makes it exponentially harder to do. So I think a longer term discussion to have is saying, hey, let's keep some funds aside, where we can invest in some of these technologies, partner with a few of them, see what works, and take it forward from there.
Great. I'm gonna jump to the next question. We've got one from Shruti, who's asking, how do you assess aspects like scalability when you don't have technical capability? Then that's an interesting technical expertise, right? So I'm assuming that as an enterprise customer, there are times when you don't potentially possess that capability to completely understand um, the aspects around integration, the development roadmap, the long term scalability, security, etc. So typically when I look at an end to end HR tech program, there are a couple of roles that come to mind, right? So There could be, functional SMEs, of course, like people like who are on the call who understand, processes end to end. There could be, experienced designers, as I talked about earlier in the openness framework. Design for experience is very critical. There could be, of course, technology and integration teams. There would need to be data architects, and data science professionals that you need to bring in to leverage data coming out of these solutions, and change champions, of course. So considering the mix of all of these, skills that are required, it's important that you if you don't possess them, and I keep joking about the fact that it's important to beg, borrow, or steal this capability. And if it makes sense, there are a number of HR tech advisory, and implementation partner firms that are emerging, which have that capability to partner with you in your longer term roadmap. You could pick a small assignment with them to understand how they can complement your set of skills that you have in the roles that I called out. Good. And I'm gonna pick up another question here. And this one, Nairath, is for you. Sahil asks, as an investor, what are some of the do's and don'ts that you keep in mind before you decide to back a startup? That's for you, Nairath.
No, that's a very broad question. I mean, and we don't have enough time for it, but I'll definitely love to catch up offline sometime to discuss that. But um, I mean, very difficult to summarize that, but talk about that in context of tech itself, and specifically for HR tech, as I said, right? When you're going right, see, HR tech is especially when it's talent acquisition, especially it's a noisy space. There are enough companies out there, or there are enough services companies which are trying to position themselves as SaaS companies. So trust me, so that's a very noisy space. So I think one of the most critical things is positioning in front of the investors. How do you take, or do you find that right pivot that massively differentiates you from the competition, be it any of the spaces? HR tech, I mean, problems, there are a lot of problems which seem quite intuitive, but when you talk to the corporates, actually, those are not the problem areas. There are completely different set of problems that are actually happening. So I think one of the biggest thing is positioning yourself correctly, doing the right thing, pivoting yours, finding the right niche where you want to grab the opportunity completely is what my understanding on the do part. On the don't part is obviously don't, I mean, if you're starting up, then don't go head on in a market which is already crowded. Frankly, I mean, that wouldn't get you an investment. If purely from an investor's perspective, you might be solving a huge problem, but if 50 people are already trying to solve that with 50 different approaches and have not been able to scale up, then that's not the market to go after. So that's a clear no-no if you're about to venture into something that remotely dwells on an area which is extremely crowded and you are not massively differentiated. So I think that's a broad do and don't, but there are enough number of do's and don'ts that I can point out in a longer discussion.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Nairath. I'm picking up the last question for today, and this one is from Sriram, who asks, in the current context, what is the typical entry point that you're seeing for any organization from an HR tech perspective in the employee life cycle, and how do they progress? And do you see people analytics and O&A coming earlier in the HR tech adoption life cycle? I'll go first, and Aniket, maybe you can add closing comments. In my mind, the last poll question that you saw, Sriram, is representative of how people are investing in this space. Assuming that of course, people who are interested in this topic are on this conversation. But the fact is, a lot of the investments are in the front end of the life cycle, starting with talent acquisition and then funneling through the entire life cycle. And that's purely because of those opportunities, as I said earlier, with a very wide funnel to engage with, especially from a recruitment context around high-end technology being used. I think around O&A and people analytics is very important at the same time. When I wouldn't think that they are going to form the front of your investments, purely because there's a need for you to have a fairly robust data governance, and data quality program that ensures that you've got good quality data that's going to yield meaningful analytics. Of course, there's a saying that AI can solve anything, but in my mind, at least, ensuring that you have good clean data and investing in programs that deliver that are important for meaningful ONA kind of work. Aniket, do you have a quick 15-20 seconds on that?
Sure, sure. Yeah. So I think the hook that all most startups have used to get into companies is payroll and attendance, because that's where companies see actual value, right? A lot of them have been using Excel or using, say, a PeopleStrong Oracle Fusion that they're not happy with, and then they want to land and expand after that. I think Darwinbox has done a great job of then becoming full stack, where they offer different modules. I think more of, yes, talent acquisition is another thing, but I think very hard for companies who are into talent acquisition then also go into talent development or continuous or day-to-day runnings of a company. I think some more interesting companies now that I'm seeing are taking a more focused approach of saying, hey, I will only look at continuous performance management, tasks, tracking, reviews, rewards, etc. And really focus in on that and be the best player in that market and show companies the value of that.
Great. Thank you, Aniket. Shweta, over to you. Thank you, Al, and hand it back to Shweta.
Great.
And
Thank you,
thanks,
George.
Nerit and Aniket.
Thanks, George, and thank you, Nerit and Aniket, for your great insights. I think with this question and answer session, we are going to wrap up today's webcast, which was very interesting. We have, in fact, many more questions coming up, and I'm going to ask the audience, to kind of direct those questions to Nerit and Aniket at Tech HR on 1st August and 2nd August. And once again, we thank our speakers for the invaluable information they have shared with us today. And meanwhile, the audience, they can provide their feedback in the survey link, which is provided in the chat section, because your input matters. And that concludes today's webcast. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you very much. Have a good day, everyone.